my question would be, can only holy beings, or I guess like Elohim is probably the best word to describe it, be omnipresent?
So the saints are deified, and so they're present via the divine energies because they're deified. So they're not present because they're God in a natural, in a sense of divine nature, but they participate in the divine energies, which allows them to be deified, which allows them to be in a mystical way present. And that's why if you read Revelation 5 through 9, when John sees into heaven on the Lord's day, he's on earth, but he's in the presence of the heavenly liturgy. So we believe that the liturgy is heaven on earth, literally. And God is able to do that because he's God and he can bring heaven down to earth in the incarnation. So no, it's not omnipresence to be in outside of time and space.
So what do you mean by, I'm just confused by what you mean by deified. Like they're given like a, not a godhood necessarily, but like,
well, Jesus says in John 17 that he came to give us a share, a real participation in the glory that he had with the Father before the foundation of the world. Jesus says, I have said ye are gods to the Pharisees. And Peter says that we become partakers of the divine nature. So that's deification, that's theosis. You really do become immortal.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused between what you mean by like immortal versus like the understanding of like being in multiple places at once. For me, I guess what confused me.
So
okay.
Again, are the saints in heaven on earth or not? In Revelation 5 through 9. Huh?
They're not on earth, are they? I don't remember.
Well, how is there an altar on earth in Hebrews 13?
So they're in heaven.
Heaven comes down to earth in the liturgy, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
When John in Revelations 5 through 9 is praying in the Spirit on the Lord's Day, he's doing the liturgy and he sees into heaven and he sees the heavenly liturgy opened up, that he's in heaven. So heaven comes down to us in the liturgy, and that's how the saints are present.
Okay. That makes a bit more sense. I'm still kind of confused, but it's okay. I have to read more, so.
Well, read Revelation 5 through 9 and think about that as the heavenly worship service being also on earth. We are raised up into heaven. This is the incarnation. The incarnation brings heaven to earth and us into heaven. Heaven is already here. It's now. The kingdom of God is on earth. It's the church. It's the liturgy. So when Paul says in Hebrews 13 that we have an altar that we eat from, that the people who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat, he's saying that's the same altar. What I'm arguing is that that's the same altar that John sees in heaven when he sees the lamb slain in heaven. Why is there a lamb slain in heaven when John sees that? If Protestantism is true, the sacrifice is already complete, bro. There's no continuation of that or perpetuation of that. But yet John sees into heaven and he sees the lamb slain in heaven, and he sees an altar and he sees saints praying for the church on earth. There's saints under the altar praying for the saints, offering the prayers of the saints on earth to God. Do you understand what I'm talking about or not?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know.
What I'm saying is that in Hebrews 13, Paul talks about there being an altar on earth where we eat. And I'm saying that that's the same altar that's in heaven in the book of Revelation that John sees. You don't understand what I'm saying?
I mean, kind of. The thing that I'm kind of foggy on is whether like heaven is on earth right now, because when you hear like, oh, he will wipe every tear from their eye, people still weep today, and so how can we know
that doesn't mean that right, and that's why Paul says that even though he ascended, we do not yet see all things subjected to him in Corinthians. So there's a process of working this out in history, even though the work is already complete.
Okay. Where does Paul say that?
Right now we,
so I can write it down.
1 Corinthians, I'm going from memory here, 1 Corinthians, okay. Right now we do not yet see all things subjected to him, even though he is ascended. Is it 1 Corinthians 15?
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because my prof was basically talking
1
about
Corinthians
how-
15:28. Now when all things are made subject to him, it's Hebrews 2 where he says that not even though all things are subject to him, we do not yet see all things in history subjected to him. But all things were subjected to him when he rose on the cross and sat at the right hand of the Father. So he began to reign when he ascended, right?
Yeah, okay. That makes a bit more sense. I think my prof was just really throwing me off because we were learning about how basically in Mesopotamia they believed that God would reside in an idol that you made, and then she made the illusion that the Orthodox believe the same thing, and therefore it's like incongruent because of the fact that you can't have like multiple idols of a human, and then there would be the human would literally be inside the idol, and then that would cause, that made me a little confused because I was like, what the heck? So,
well, even in the Old Testament, if you read the Benjamin Summer book, he admits that the Old Testament shows that there's a fluidity to the bodies and the embodiment of God throughout the Old Testament in terms of the theophanies, even to the point of multiple objects in the Old Testament, like the oak of Mamre, or like the stone that's anointed that Jacob lays his head on. Like all of these are examples of sacramental things, even in the Old Testament. So that's preposterous, and even in terms of the Old Covenant.
well, basically the argument was that God, although he was kind of omnipresent in the beginning, he began to reside in the tabernacle, and now he resides in the Eucharist, which I don't necessarily fully believe because I think he's entirely omnipresent, but he's also literally inside the Eucharist as well. So it's just really confusing.
Right. So this is false either ors. So yeah, I mean, I'll let you talk just a second, Father Deacon. So the false either ors because Jesus didn't cease to be omniscient. If you read Philippians 2, when he engaged in the kenosis, right? So Philippians 2 is the kenosis passage where he willfully limits himself to be in a mode of being born as a human, as a man, right? So he's in the form of God, Paul says in Philippians 2. He never ceases to be divine or loses omnipresence, but he's in a special mode of his presence in the incarnation. And it's the same with the church or the sacraments. Go ahead, Father Deacon.
Well, I was going to say, even just kind of Greek metaphysics, you can get an idea. For example, there's one form of triangle, right angle triangle or something like that, that transcends space and time, or something, let's say. But there's many instances of that one form in particular material instantiations, which is kind of like you were saying, like the mode. So this is why it's really important. It's not completely analogous, but this is why it's really important, whether it's what you were talking with the individual prior or this, a notion of kind of Greek metaphysics and philosophy kind of, it breaks up and clears the way from these things being kind of hang-ups. Do you see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that particular triangle, even though there's one form of triangle, doesn't mean that the triangle itself is omnipresent. Do you see? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of.
So there's many triangles, right? They're all triangles. Yeah. That doesn't mean triangle is omnipresent.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, because I believe that Christ is in the Eucharist, and also God can be outside of the Eucharist at the same time too. But like, obviously, my prof was kind of out to lunch on some things, which is okay. Yeah, that was just what really confused me about it, because saints at the end of the day are human and not God. So I wanted to see
but they're deified.
Let me do another either or. Jay and I always bring this up, that Christ is God, in one sense, is omnipresence, right? He transcends all space and time as the divine person and having the divine essence. But Christ walking on the road in Jerusalem is not in Athens. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it breaks this kind of either or. It's like, well, he has a special mode in the physical person of Jesus of Nazareth, such that he is actually in Jerusalem and not in Athens. While at the same time, in a different respect because he's divine. He is omnipresent. And so likewise with the saints too, is that, yeah, there's a physical, but they're also united with God. And so they have properties that would transcend normal physical properties of being in the particular icon or when they were living, etc.
Yeah, again, Revelation 5 through 9, you'll see that the saints on earth are aware of and know what's going on with the church militant, the church on earth, and they pray for them. So, again, it's the Bible itself that's telling us that the saints in heaven are involved in the earthly worship of the church and know what's going on. And so Protestants just don't typically think of the book of Revelation as a liturgical book or that it's describing an actual heavenly worship service. Amon?